Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 917th night, she pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when King Jaliad charged his son with such injunctions, and made him as heir to succeed him in his reign, the prince said, O dear father mine, thou knowest that I have ever been to thee obedient, and thy commandment carrying out, mindful of thine injunctions, and thy approof seeking. For thou hast been to me the best of fathers. How then after thy death shall I depart from that which contenteth thee? And now, having fairly ordered my nurture, thou art about to depart from me, and I have no power to bring thee back to me. But an I be mindful of thy charge, I shall be blessed therein, and great good fortune shall betide me. Quoth the king, and indeed he was in the last agony of departing life. Dear my son, cleave fast unto 10 precepts, which if thou hold, Allah shall profit thee herewith in this world and the next world, and they are as follows. Whenas thou art wroth, curb thy wrath. When thou art afflicted, be patient. When thou speakest, be soothfast. And when thou promisest, perform. When thou judgest, do justice. When thou hast power, be merciful. Deal generously by thy governors and lieutenants. Forgive thy foes. Be lavish of good offices to thine adversary, and stay thy mischief from him. Observe also other 10 precepts, wherewith Allah shall profit thee among the people of thy realm, to wit, when thou dividest, be just. When thou punishest, oppress not. When thou engagest thyself, fulfill thine engagement. Hearken to those that give thee loyal counsel. When offense is offered to thee, neglect it. Abstain from contention. Enjoy thy subjects to the observance of the divine laws and of praiseworthy practices. Abate ignorance with a sharp sword. Withhold thy regard from treachery and its untruth. And lastly, do equal justice between the folk, so they may love thee, great and small, and the wicked and corrupt of them may fear thee. Then he addressed himself to the emirs and Olema, which were present when he appointed his son to be his successor, saying, Beware ye of transgressing the commandment of your king, and neglecting to hearken to your chief, for therein lieth ruin of your realm, and sundering for your society, and bane for your bodies, and perdition for your possessions, and your foe would exult over you. Well ye wot the covenant ye made with me, and even thus shall be your covenant with this youth, and the troth which plighted between you and me shall be also between you and him. Wherefore it behoveth you to give ear unto and obey his commandment, for that in this is the well-being of your conditions. So be ye constant with him Annette, that wherein ye were with me, and your estate shall prosper, and your affairs be fair. For behold, he hath kingship over you, and is the Lord of your fortune and the peace. Then the death agony seized him, and his tongue was bridled. So he pressed his son to him, and kissed him, and gave thanks unto Allah, after which his hour came, and his soul fared forth. All his subjects and the people of his court mourned and keened over him, and they shrouded him and buried him with pomp and honor and reverence, after which they returned with the prince, and clad him in the royal robes, and crowned him with his father's crown, and put the seal ring on his finger, after seating him on the throne of sovereignship. The young king ordered himself towards them after his father's fashion of mildness and justice and benevolence, for a little while, till the world waylaid him and entangled him in its lust, whereupon its pleasures made him their prey, and he turned to its gilding and gewgaws, forsaking the engagements which his father had imposed upon him, and casting off his obedience to him, neglecting the affairs of his reign, and treading a road wherein was only destruction. The love of women waxed stark in him, and came to such a pass that whenever he heard tell of a beauty, he would send for her, and take her to wife. And after this wise he collected women more in number than ever had Solomon, David's son, king of the children of Israel. Also, he would shut himself up and accompany them for a month at a time, during which he went not forth, neither inquired of his realm or its rule, nor looked into the grievances of such of his subjects as complained to him. And if they wrote to him, he returned them no reply. Now, when they saw this, and witnessed his neglect of their affairs, and lack of care for their interests and those of the state, they were assured that ere long some calamity would betide them, and this was grievous to them. So they met privily one with another, and took counsel together, blaming their king. And one of them said to the rest, Come, let us go to Shimas, chief of the Wazirs, and set forth to him our case, and acquaint him with that wherein we are by reason of this king, so he may admonish him. Else in a little calamity will dawn upon us, for the world hath dazzled the sovereign in its delights, and seduced him with its snares. Accordingly, they repaired to Shimas, and said to him, O wise man and prudent, the world hath dazed the king with its delights, and taking him in its tolls, so that he turneth into vanity, and worketh for the undoing of the state. Now, with the disordering of the state, the commons will be corrupted, and our affairs will run to ruin. We see him not for days and months, nor cometh there forth from him any commandment to us, or to the wazir, or any else. We cannot refer aught of our need to him, and he looketh not to the administration of justice, nor taketh thought to the condition of any of his subjects in this disregard of them. And behold, we are come to acquaint thee with the truth of things, for that thou art the chiefest and most accomplished of us. And it behoveth not that calamity befall a land wherein thou dwellest, seeing that thou art most able of any to amend this king. Wherefore, go thou and speak with him. Haply he will hearken to thy word, and return unto the way of Allah. So Shimas arose forthright, and repairing to the palace, foregathered with the first page he could find, and said to him, Fair my son, I beseech thee, ask leave for me to go into the king, for I have an affair concerning which I would fain see his face, and acquaint him therewith, and hear what he shall answer me anent. Answered the page, O my lord, by Allah, this month past hath he given none leave to come into him, nor have I all this time looked upon his face. But I will direct thee to one who shall crave admission for thee. Do thou lay hold of such a blackamoor slave, who standeth at his head, and bringeth him food from the kitchen. When he cometh forth to go to the kitchen, ask him what seemeth good to thee, for he will do for thee that which thou desirest. So the wazir repaired to the door of the kitchen, and sat there a little while, till up came a black, and would have entered the kitchen. But Shimas caught hold of him, and said to him, Dear my son, I would fain stand in presence of the king, and speak with him of somewhat especially concerneth him. So prithee, of thy kindness, when he hath ended his undurned meal, and his temper is at its best, speak for me, and get me leave to approach him, so I may bespeak him of that which shall suit him. I hear and obey, answered the black, and taking the food carried it to the king, who ate thereof, and his temper was soothed thereby. Then said the black to him, Shimas standeth at the door, and craveth admission, so he may acquaint thee with matters that specially concern thee. At this the king was alarmed and disquieted, and commanded to admit the minister. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 918th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the king bade the blackamoor admit Shimas, the slave went forth to him and bade him enter. Whereupon he went in, and falling prone before Allah, kissed the king's hands and blessed him. Then said the king, What hath betided thee, O Shimas, that thou seekest admission unto me? He answered, This long while have I not looked upon the face of my lord the king, and indeed I longed sore for thee. And now, behold, I have seen thy countenance, and come to thee with word which I would lief say to thee, O king stablished in all prosperity. Quoth the king, Say what seemeth good to thee. And quoth Shimas, I would have thee bear in mind, O king, that Allah Almighty hath endowed thee with learning and wisdom for all the tenderness of thy years, such as he hath never vouchsafed unto any of the kings before thee, and hath fulfilled the measure of his bounties to thee with the kingship. and he loveth not that thou depart from that wherewith he hath endowed thee unto other than it, by means of thy disobedience to him. Wherefore it behoveth thee not to levy war against him with thy hordes, but of his injunctions to be mindful, and unto his commandment obedient. Indeed, I have seen thee, this while past, forget thy sire and his charges, and reject his covenant, and neglect his counsels and words of wisdom, and renounce his justice and good governance, remembering not the bounty of Allah to thee, never requiting it with gratitude and thanks to him. The king answered, How so? And what is the manner of this? And Shimas answered, The manner of it is that thou neglectest to administer the affairs of the state, and that which Allah hath committed unto thee of the interest of thy lieges, and surrenderest thyself to thy lower nature in that which it maketh fair to thee of the slight lusts of the world. Verily it is said that the welfare of the state, and of the faith, and of the folk is of things which it behoveth the king to watch. Wherefore it is my rede, O king, that thou look fairly to the issue of thine affair, for thus wilt thou find the manifest road wherein is salvation, and not accept a trifling pleasure, and a transient which leadeth to the abyss of destruction, lest thou befall thee that which befell the fisherman. The king asked, And what was that? And Shimas answered, There hath reached me the tale of the foolish fisherman. A fisherman went forth to a river for fishing therein, and as was wont, and when he came thither and walked upon the bridge, he saw a great fish, and said in himself, 'Twill not serve me to abide here, but I will follow yonder fish, whitherso it goeth, till I catch it, for it will relieve me from fishing for days and days. So he did off his clothes and plunged into the river after the fish. The current bore them along till it overtook it, and laid hold of it, when he turned and found himself far from the bank. But albeit he saw what the stream had done with him, he would not lose the fish in return, but ventured life, and gripping it fast with both hands, let his body float with the flow, which carried him on till it cast him into a whirlpool, none might enter and come out therefrom. With this he fell to crying out and saying, Save a drowning man! And there came to him folk of the keepers of the river, and said to him, What aileth thee to cast thyself into this great peril? Quoth he, It was I myself who forsake the plain way wherein was salvation, and gave myself over to conspicuous and perdition. Quoth they, O fellow, why dost thou leave the way of safety, and cast thyself into this destruction, knowing that of old that none may enter herein and be saved? What hindered thee from throwing away what was in thy hand, and saving thyself? So hast thou escaped with thy life, and not fallen into this perdition, whence there is no deliverance. And now not one of us can rescue thee from this ruin. Accordingly, the man cut off all his hopes of life, and lost that which was in his hand, and for which was his flesh had prompted him to venture himself, and died a miserable death. And I tell thee not this parable, O king, added Shimas, but that thou mayest leave this contemptible conduct, that diverteth thee from thy duties, and look to that which is committed to thee of the rule of thy folk, and the maintenance of the order of thy realm, so that none may see fault in thee. The king asked, What wouldest thou have me do? And Shimas answered, Tomorrow, an thou be well and in good case, give the folk leave to come in to thee, and look into their affairs, and excuse thyself to them, and promise them of thine own accord good governance and prosperity. Quoth the king, O Shimas, thou hast spoken sensibly and rightly, and tomorrow, Inshallah, I will do that which thou counsellest me. So the wazir went out from him, and told the lieges all he had said to him. And when morning morrowed, the king came forth of his privacy, and bade admit the people, to whom he excused himself, promising them that thenceforward he would deal with them as they wished, wherein they would content, and departed each to his own dwelling. Then one of the king's wives, who was his most beloved of them, and most in honor of him, visited him, and seeing him changed of color, and thoughtful over his affairs, by reason of that which he had heard from his chief wazir, said to him, O king, how is it that I see thee troubled in mind? Hast thou aught to complain of? Answered he, No, but my pleasures have distracted me from my duties. What right have I to be thus negligent of my affairs and those of my subjects? If I continue on this wise, soon, very soon, the kingdom will pass out of my hand. She rejoined, I see, O king, that thou hast been duped by the wazirs and ministers, who wish but to torment and entrap thee, so thou mayest have no joyance of this thy kingship, neither feel ease nor taste delight. Nay, they would have thee consume thy life in warding off trouble from them, till thy days be wasted in travail and weariness, and thou be as one who slayeth himself for the benefit of another, or like the boy and the thieves. Asked the king, And how was that? She answered, They tell the following tale anent the boy and the thieves. 7 thieves once went out to steal according to their custom, and fell in with a boy, poor and orphan to boot, who besought them for somewhat to eat. One of them asked him, Wilt go with us, O boy, and we will feed thee, and give thee drink, clothe thee, and entreat thee kindly? And he answered, Needs must I go with you whitherso ye will, and ye are as my own kith and kin. So they took him and fared on with him till they came to a garden, and entering went round about therein till they found a walnut tree laden with ripe fruit, and said to him, O boy, wilt thou enter this garden with us, and swarm up this tree, and eat of its walnuts, and thy sufficiency, and throw the rest down to us? He consented, and entered with them. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 919th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the boy consented and entered with the thieves, one of them said to him, Look which is the lightest and smallest of us, and make him climb the tree. And they said, None of us is slighter than this boy. So they sent him up into the tree, and said to him, O boy, touch naught of the fruit, lest some one see thee, and work thee a mischief. He asked, How then shall I do? And they answered, Sit among the boughs, and shake them one by one with all thy might, so that which is therein may fall, and we will pick it up. Then when thou hast made an end of shaking down the tree, come down, and take thy share of that which we have gathered. Accordingly, he began to shake every branch at which he could come, so that the nuts fell, and the thieves picked them up, and ate them, and hid some till all were full, save the boy, who had eaten naught. As they were thus engaged, behold, up came the owner of the garden, who, standing to witness the spectacle, inquired of them, What do you with this tree? They replied, We have taken naught thereof, but we were passing by, and see yonder boy on the tree, took him for the owner thereof, and besought him to give us to eat of the fruit. Thereat he fell to shaking one of the branches, so that the nuts dropped down, and we are not at fault. Quoth the master to the boy, What sayest thou? And quoth he, These men lie, but I will tell thee the truth. It is that we all came hither together, and they bade me climb the tree and shake its boughs, that the nuts might fall down to them, and I obeyed their bidding. Said the master, Thou hast cast thyself into sore calamity, but hast thou profited by eating aught of the fruit? And he said, I have eaten naught thereof. Rejoined the owner of the garden, Now know I thy folly and thine ignorance, in that thou wast wrought to ruin thyself and profit others. Then said he to the thieves, I have no resort against you, so wend your ways. But he laid hands on the boy and punished him. On like wise, added the favourite, thy wazirs and officers of state would sacrifice thee to their interests, and do with thee as they did the thieves with the boy. Answered the king, Thou sayest sooth, and speakest truth. I will not go forth to them, but leave my nor leave my pleasures. Then he passed the night with his wife in all delight till the morning, when the grand wazir arose, and assembling the officers of state, together with those of the lieges who were present with them, repaired to them the palace gate, congratulating one another and rejoicing. But the door opened not, nor did the king come forth unto them, nor give them leave to go into him. So when they despaired of them, he said to Shimas, O excellent wazir, and accomplished sage, seest thou not the behaviour of this lad, young of years and little of wit, how he added to his offences falsehood? See how he hath broken his promise to us, and hath not performed that for which he was engaged unto us. And this sin it behoveth thee join unto his other sins. But we beseech thee, go into him again, and discover what is the cause of his holding back and refusal to come forth. For we doubt not but that the like of his actions cometh of his corrupt nature, and indeed he is now hardened to the highest degree. Accordingly Shimas went into the king and bespake him, saying, Peace be with you, O king. How cometh it that I see thee give thyself up to these slight pleasures, and neglect the great affair whereto behoveth thy sedulously apply thyself? Thou art like unto a man who had a milk camel, and coming one day to milk her, the goodness of her milk made him neglect to hold fast her halter, which when as she felt, she haled herself free and made off into the wold. Thus the man lost both milk and camel, and the loss that betided him surpassed his gain. Wherefore, O king, do thou look unto the wherein is thy welfare, and the weal of thy subjects. For even as it behoveth not a man to sit for ever at the kitchen door, because of his need unto food, so should he not always company with women, by reason of his inclination to them. And as a man should eat but as much food as will guard him from the pains of hunger and drink, but what will ward off the pangs of thirst, in like manner it behoveth the sensible man to content himself with passing 2 of the 24 hours of his day with women, and expend the rest in ordering his affairs and those of his people. For to be longer than this in company of women is hurtful both to mind and body, seeing that they bid not unto good, neither direct thereto. Wherefore it besitteth not a man to accept from them or word or deed. For indeed it hath reached me that many men have come to ruin through their women, and amongst others a certain man who perished through conversation with his wife at her command. The king asked, And how was that? And Shimas answered, saying, Hear, O king, the tale of the man and his wife. They relate that a certain man had a wife whom he loved and he honored, giving ear to her speech and doing according to her rede. Moreover, he had a garden which he had newly planted with his own hand, and was wont to go thither every day to tend it and water it. One day his wife asked him, What hast thou planted in thy garden? And he answered, All thou lovest and desirest, and I am assiduous in tending and watering it. Quoth she, Wilt thou not carry me thither and show it to me, so that I may look upon it, and offer thee up a pious prayer for its prosperity, seeing that my orisons are effectual? Quoth he, I will well, but have patience with me till the morrow, when I will come and take thee. So early in the ensuing day he carried her to the garden, where he entered with her. Now the 2 young men saw them enter from afar, and said each to the other, Yonder man is an adulterer, and yonder woman is an adulteress, and they have not entered this garden but to commit adultery. Thereupon they followed the couple to see what they would do, and hid themselves in the corner of the garden. The man and his wife, after entering, abode a while therein, and presently he said to her, Pray me the prayer thou didst promise me. But she replied, saying, I will not pray for thee until thou do away my desire, and that which women seek from men. Cried he, Out on thee, O woman! Hast thou not thy fill of me in the house? Here I fear scandal, especially as thou divertest me from my affairs. Fearest thou not that someone will see us? Quoth she, We need have no care for that, seeing that we do not neither sin nor lewdness. And as for the watering of the garden, that may wait, because thou canst water it when thou wilt. And she would take neither excuse nor reason from him, but was instant with him in sinking carnal affairs. So he rose and lay with her, which when the young men aforesaid saw, they ran upon them and seized them, and saying, We will not let you go, for ye are adulterers, and except we have carnal knowledge of the woman, we will report you to the police. Answered the man, Fie upon you! This is my wife, and I am the master of the garden. They paid no heed to him, but fell upon the woman, who cried out to him for succor, saying, Suffer them not to defile me. Accordingly he came up to them, calling out for help, but one turned on him and smote him with his dagger, and slew him. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale, till it be morrow.